Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Happy hump day, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's Wednesday already. Another week just about halfway done.
Yeah, the stocks were flying yesterday. They were sailing along, and I said, okay, this is good. What's going to screw it up? Well, okay. You know, and the panic sets in when China goes, boo. Because we've given so much up to them over the years that we are down to the final straw. And if we don't stand tough here and stand up to them, and with what's going on with the borders and, the lefty judges chiming in and the Democrats, sitting there going like in Arizona where they're holding up names of illegals now and walking out on Tom Home. Come on. What do you...
Caroline Levitt talked about President Trump and his resilience and his determination. Listen.
In total, since the Liberation Day announcement, nearly 70 countries have already reached out to the president to begin a negotiation. Countries are falling over themselves to reform their unfair trade practices and free open their markets to our country. Why? Because these countries greatly respect President Trump in the sheer power of the American market. These countries realize they've gotten filthy rich over the past few decades by imposing substantial tariffs on American-made products and ridiculous non-monetary barriers to block out American industry. The jig is up. Past American presidents sat by and let this happen, but President Trump stood up for our country, and he is saying no more. The president's message has been simple and consistent from the beginning. To countries around the world, bring us your best offers, and he will listen. Deals will only be made if they benefit American workers and address our nation's crippling trade deficits. America does not need other countries as much as other countries need us, and President Trump knows this. He's going to use the leverage of our markets and our country to the advantage of the people he was sworn in to represent. On the other hand, countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership. He is guided by a firm belief that America must be able to produce essential goods for our own people and export them to the rest of the world. A strong America cannot be solely dependent on foreign countries for our food, medicines, and critical minerals. And America must always maintain a robust defense supply chain. Reprioritizing and strengthening our manufacturing industry are essential national and economic security issues of the utmost importance to President Trump.
From what I understand, Xi Jinping has doubled down on China's determination not to buckle. They're calling us blackmailers and that we're being unjust. But you have to understand, folks, that China over the past several decades has been really taking advantage of our economic openness, our economic freedoms. And by the way, they've also stolen our technologies and our copyrights and things like that. China has been, if anything, the number one abuser of the economic system. So when you have a guy like Trump saying, hey, we've had it. We're going to start getting what we deserve in this country. And by the way, we weren't talking about something terribly exorbitant. We were talking about something that was fair and equitable. But China had a problem with that. Well, now, as of midnight last night, they have a tariff of 104%, which means, simply put, if you have an item that sells for $100 here, that's what it's valued at in China, it will sell here for $204. That's
but
the difference.
The interesting thing is, everybody's thinking that we started out at zero tariffs. That was not true. It might have been a very low tariff, that the other way around that they would pay to us. But the tariff that we paid, you go to a store, I did that over the weekend. Went to a store, started looking at labels and clothes. I'm going, oh, this is nice.
Yeah,
$48 for this shirt. Oh, okay, it's made in China. So if you took the tariff down on that they charge us, in other words, if it were what we get from them, then all of a sudden that $48 shirt would have been $18 shirt.
Well, you know what
You
else
know?
they did, Bill? They've also historically countries like Japan and China have, and by the way, Europe too,
Mm-hmm.
have closed their markets to our cars. So
Yeah.
you may come over here and see all these Japanese cars, and we're just used to it. Honda, Toyota. You see Korean cars, but go over to their countries. You don't see Chevrolets and Fords. You don't see Chryslers. You don't see those things because they've made it economically unsound for us to sell there. We can't afford to sell our cars there.
Yeah, they've closed their doors to
Yeah.
us. So, but people don't see that. They just sit there, they get up in the morning, the birds are singing, they're stretching, wiping the sleep out of their eye, they pour their cup of coffee, they get dressed, well, they get showered, they get dressed, and they go to work, la-di-da-di-da, listen to the radio, they get there, life is good. Their stocks are doing all right, and they don't think about the millions of jobs that have been lost over the years because of tariffs and manufacturing that's gone away. And the heart of the middle class America has been ripped out of the nation. They just mosey along, but things are starting to waver a little bit because we had a pretty strong foundation, but it's been eroded away.
During the
It's
Biden
almost gone.
administration, supposedly during the Biden administration, we lost 11 million jobs.
Yeah.
11 million families had their income cut out from underneath them, and Biden did nothing. Biden didn't do a thing. He didn't even acknowledge it. He called it Bidenomics. He called it the great economic reform. It was anything but that. We haven't had a president intelligently and deliberately address our economy like Trump is doing now in the past 100 years. Even during Roosevelt's time, Bill, where he was trying to change things during between 1933 and 1945, it was a lot of free stuff. He was padding and pumping our economy, and then we had the war. And the war, I hate to say it, but it is always a great inflator of economies because all of a sudden everybody's back to work making bombs and tanks, But that was to Roosevelt's advantage. Go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, I was going to say, yeah, that worked then. But if a war in today's age, going to work to manufacture to build the war machine, no, the machine has changed, and it's going to be over in the blink of an eye. So with nukes out there and the types of weapons, Susie Riveter won't make it out of the house to get to the factory to make the whatever it is she's got to rivet together. It's going to be done. It's going to be over with. And a country that doesn't produce, if we don't manufacture, then we don't have these problems that come up going, how do we do that? And somebody goes, I have an idea. And there, necessity is the mother of invention. We don't have that anymore. That's been shipped away overseas. So we're failing.
And by the way, I saw some memes that were put together by the Chinese. I saw one which was, an insult to the American worker. It showed some fat, overweight workers on a line making socks, meaning that they make them in China cheaper, faster, and more effectively. And it showed these fat, overweight people on and again, it's fictional. It's probably AI generated. And they're making socks. And they look lost and bored and incompetent. But that's not how we've ever been as a society. First of all, if we make socks in the U.S., we're probably going to automate the system. We're probably going to make it faster, more effective. And if people are working in a sock factory in our country, they're probably going to be running the computer systems and making sure we make more and better socks than they make over in their sweatshops in China. But they have this attitude, folks. They look in at the big, fat, slow, gluttonous, overweight American. That's how they see us. They don't see us anymore as being competent enough to make our own stuff. And Trump is saying, hey, we can do it without you. You just watch.
They're saying we're fat and lazy. And to a degree, you got to sit there, because I look at some of my fellow friends out there, and I'm just going to call them for what they are, Democrats. Because I had one that listened to the show and said, how can you say anything because you've never manufactured anything in your life? And I'm sitting there going, well, pal, maybe in your mind I didn't. But, I came from an industry where my labor and my skill came from me. And I'm sitting there going, and I think you did the same thing.
Not like that, Bill. You had to go to work every day, had to punch a clock, had to be there in an exact time. You had to perform at a certain level, and nobody gave you anything to do what you did or what I did. They make it sound like because we did a business that was unique, that it was easy. Oh, he's just in radio. Oh,
yeah,
he just
ingenuity and labor comes in many different ways. But, they take my skill. Somebody wanted to buy the rights to my voice several years ago. Well, not that many years ago, about 3. But either way, and it was a nothing thing. And, they use them for AIs. I didn't sell it, by the way. But, now, companies out of China, they sit there and they have these AIs. Oh,
and I hear them all the time, by the way, Bill. I hear this one guy. And this one guy somewhere out there.
The one voice everywhere,
He sold his soul, literally, for $5,000. Now, you may say, oh, he got $5,000. But the fathead probably could have made in his career 10 times that amount if he just had a little patience. But he gave it away, and now he doesn't have any rights to his own voice anymore. And by the way, there's no demand for his own voice anymore because, hey,
he's everywhere.
I can get it for free on my computer. I don't need you.
Yeah, he's on the clearance rack at the local Walmart.
Yeah, exactly.
And see, that's a joke, too, because dear old Sam Walton probably rolling in his grave right now going, I built this enterprise on made in America.
Well, in all honesty, if I were Walmart, right now, based upon what Trump is doing,
I'd go back to
I'd go back to that. If you don't do the whole store, give people the options in your store. Say, the general purpose rack and then the Made in America rack. So the people can say, well, I'm going to buy the Made in America. I'll pay a few bucks more, but I want it I want it made in Des Moines, or I want it made in St. Louis or something like that.
We bitch about foreign countries. Look at those sweatshops where they make those shirts. When we had the pandemic, there were masks. They were made in sweatshops, but we ate them up. And I knew a company down in, where was it? Pennsylvania, actually, that made masks. And it was American workers making masks. And they made them quick. They weren't sweatshops, but they were sitting there going, and they paid a damn good wage for doing it. And a lot of the masks were distributed for free or at discount prices because they could crank out a lot of them. But we make fun of these foreign countries, but yet that's what we capitulate to do. We sit there and we give it all away, and we promote the sweatshops.
You mentioned one of those masks. I saw a picture of a mask being made in a sweatshop in China. It had a little 7-year-old kid sitting on the floor of a dirty shop. On the floor were a bunch of these blue masks, and he was shuffling them like cards and then putting them in stacks and then placing them in plastic bags and sealing them. And they were going to go to the U.S. And I was thinking, there's nothing sterile about that. My God. At least in this country, you have standards. Amazing.
Nope, not anymore. So
anyway, Bill, I think that I do think there's a guy named Art Laffer. I'll play this. Art Laffer is an economist. He was very important in the Reagan administration. You may have heard of the Laffer curve. It was his. He's the guy who he actually outlined, and they talk about it at the end of this interview. He actually outlined Reagan's tax deals, his tax cuts, and he did it on a napkin. This guy's a brilliant guy, very, very affable guy too. For an economist, usually you think of economists as being kind of numbers and boring, but Laffer's kind of an all-around nice guy. But he talked about the tariffs and what Trump is doing, and he thinks it's a win-win situation. Listen.
What is the win-win strategy? The win-win strategy is Trump is just phenomenal at negotiating. And Stuart, what he says is extremely true. These people have far higher tariffs and non-tariff barriers and quotas than we do. It is unfair. It has been done. But what he's done now has gotten them into a position where they're going to lose their access to the U.S. market if they don't redress these types of inequities that they've done. And Trump is the master negotiator, and I'm watching these people calling into Trump. This is exactly what he does beautifully and wonderfully, and I believe he can negotiate freer trade deals, get those tariffs way, way down, much lower than they are now, by primarily those people lowering their tariffs and us keeping ours low or even going lower, and it'll be a win-win. The world will prosper, we'll have a great economy, and the U.S. will be in perfect, beautiful shape for economic growth. And that's what he's good at doing, and that's what he did at the G7 meeting in 2018, I think it was. I have it in there, where he offered to lower our tariffs, but they'd get rid of theirs. It's just what we need, and it would lead to world prosperity and a reduction in hostilities.
Well, we know that is the policy, the stated policy for a long time. What's new? What is your exit strategy? What's new here?
Well, the exit strategy is he threatens the tariffs, which he has already done, so to bring them to the table. It's clear that 70 countries have called. They're coming to the table fast. Now the exit strategy is he doesn't impose those tariffs. He takes those tariffs away. He even reduces our tariffs on those countries if they will eliminate their tariffs on us. And that would be the exit strategy, which would be a win-win-win-win. That's just what we need. If those tariffs go in and stay in for a long time, Stuart, and if we have a huge escalation of tariffs as is currently planned, that would be disastrous for the U.S. and the world economy. Believe me when I tell you that. That is not a good answer.
But what's this about? You're suggesting that the president should go on global television and make a worldwide offer of you cut your tariffs and we'll cut ours, we'll get a deal. A global TV presentation. Is that part of your idea?
Yeah. Oh, well, I don't know if a global TV one is the best, but you just look at it there. He should be able to negotiate getting rid of tariffs for them and for us. A trade war, everyone loses in trade wars, but we all don't lose the same amount. Americans will lose a lot less than the foreigners do, so therefore they have an incentive to come down to the table and really drop their tariffs on our products. It will help them as well, too, Stuart. I mean, their tariffs on our products hurt their countries.
Okay, Art Laffer, thanks very much for joining us. That's a
Thank
wonderful.
you for having me back, Stuart. I miss you. I thought you didn't love me anymore.
No,
it's fun to be back with you. Thank you.
We all love Art Laffer, who wrote on a napkin President Reagan's tax-cutting idea. We love you. Don't worry about it. Art Laffer, we'll see you again soon.
That's Stuart Varney with Art Laffer yesterday, and he had some good things to say. What people have got to understand is what Trump has done is he's put all these countries on notice, all right? And they all have, and he's raised all their tariffs right now. But what he's also said is, come in, let's talk, and we'll work out a better deal. This is a negotiator. This is not edged in stone, I think this is a great move. Like Laffer says, this is a smart win-win situation.
What would happen if we sat there and just, for argument's sake, and get all the countries of the world to agree? China wouldn't, but let's say that we got them all to agree to a no tariff Tuesday. Just one day to see what would happen with it, or 1 week, or better yet, get a global tariff committee to where we just sit there. It's a fair tariff, one tariff that is negotiated for everybody across the board.
Tariffs are a tax.
Yes.
And why should we pay an exorbitant tax, and like you said, more than the country we're trading with?
It should be even. No matter where, who it is, what country it is, it should be even. And if you want to compete in the global market, you better up your game.
What you have to do as a country is you have to decide, do I make more money selling my products in your country, or do I make more money on the tariffs that we charge you to sell our products in your country? And I think personally, they make a lot more money selling the products. You know what China risks, Bill, right now? China is in an awkward situation. They're digging their heels in. They're saying, "Oh, we're not going to negotiate. We won't be blackmailed." Well, from what I've heard from people who are in the know, this is actually jeopardizing Xi's power position in China. And there's you'll get a lot of people who make a lot of money on our markets, and all of a sudden our markets will be unavailable to them, and there's going to be a lot of unhappy people in China losing tens of millions of dollars a day.
Well, he's already losing manufacturing there. It's going away. A lot of it's coming here, going to India, going Taiwan. Taiwan's really close to them. They want to take it. But either way, it's going away. This is a game of chicken. But we've got a lot of, there's a lot of fear-mongering going on in the United States. We got a lot of wusses here.
Yeah.
It's just who's going to, pull their skirt up first and run. And China should be the one running, but this is a game of chicken.
The opposition, the Democrats figured, and they really enjoyed the fact that they thought they could make hay on this. They thought the markets were going to collapse. They kept talking about it at the beginning of the week. Oh, this is terrible. It's going to be. We're going to have a Black Monday. We didn't have a Black Monday this week. A Black Monday, by the way, for people who don't know, is when the market collapsed in 1929. It was Black Monday. And
by the way, you should also point out, because they'll go, well, that was because of tariffs. Tariffs came in a little over a year after that. Tariffs had nothing to do with Black Monday and the crash back then. As a matter of fact, every time that they've said, the two times they go, well, the tariffs were after the fact, had nothing to do with the crash.
But don't you think, Bill, that a lot of these politicians don't know their history? Do not know their history. I mean,
no, they don't know.
I look at. I'll give you an example.
All right.
Jasmine Crockett.
Oh, yeah. Well, she's a brain. Yeah.
She was speaking in front of a church group in Connecticut over the weekend. And I'm going to play for you her audio. This is Jasmine Crockett. She is a representative in our government. Listen.
So I had to go around the country and educate people about what immigrants do for this country, or the fact that we are a country of immigrants.
Right.
The fact is, ain't none of y'all trying to go and farm right now. Okay, so I'm lying. Raise your hands. You're not. We done picking cotton. We are. You can't pay us enough to find a plantation.
I know that's right.
Does that lady understand that Eli Whitney invented the cotton gin, and nobody's been picking cotton like the way she's talking in well over 150 years? She's an educated black woman. She is, Bill.
And I'll give her credit for looks too. So let's take the race thing out of this. But she's playing the damn card.
She is, in my opinion, she's a troublemaker, and she's actually enjoying the spotlight. And she will diminish herself to stay in the spotlight. Like Bill said, she's an educated lady. She's gone to school. She's been educated in really good schools, and yet she pretends when she's in front of people that she's from the hood, and she talks like she's, got no education at all.
Well, she's doing that. It's a form of mockery. She's not talking up to you.
No,
she's talking down to you.
Yeah,
and just don't forget it. She is mocking you. She's making fun of you. She doesn't have her facts together, and that doesn't mean that she's not an educated lady. It just means that they don't teach things anymore, and she doesn't even know. Let's we want to go black. She don't know her roots.
We're not going back to the cotton fields. This lady hasn't got a clue. She has probably never driven by a cotton field, yet she's trying to make it sound like she's been down on the farm, and she has not been down on the farm. And this is the way a lot of the Democrats are playing their hand nowadays. We haven't got any serious, honest opposition party people right now. And that's the problem with the Democratic Party. If you look at Chuckles Schumer, everything is in crisis. Everything that Trump does is a bad move and going to cripple our economy and our nation. Everything he does is in opposition. If Trump looks out and says it's a beautiful sunny day, Schumer will say it's raining. And he'll try to convince you on it. Go ahead.
Democrats are a chicken little party. They sit there, the sky is falling, the sky is falling. Let me ask you a question. Who tried to steal the last election?
Well, in my opinion, it was the Democrats, yeah.
All right. And let's see. And it was 2020 stolen?
In my opinion.
Okay. And you see down in North Carolina, they've got 65,000 votes that are up in the air that turns out they're illegal votes, but they got dirty judges in on this. So you're looking at all of this, but yet I sit there and see James Carville going, look, you better be on the lookout because Trump is going to try to steal the midterms.
James Carville has been wrong, Bill, historically for years.
No, what he's doing is he's taking their bad and shaming us with their bad, saying it's our bad and that we're doing it. They accuse us of what they do.
Yeah. Well,
and you gotta hold them accountable, saying, well, according to the records here, you guys tried to steal the last election, and you sure as hell stole the one in 2020. It's pretty evident.
Maybe the parties have been this way for decades. I don't know.
I think they have.
But I'll tell you, it has never been more open and more visible to the average onlooker than now, because we have social media. We have cameras everywhere. We have reporters everywhere. So we're seeing all of this corruption and all of these lies. I don't know how the Democratic Party thinks that they're going to recover, because they haven't made one step in a direction that's different from where they were before they lost terribly this last election. They're still walking down that same path. They haven't turned around and said, we made a mistake. This is not the way we should be walking. Let's figure something else out and walk in a different direction. Nope. Yeah. They're still trodden down. They're still following Chuck Schumer. They're still listening to Nancy Pelosi. They're still listening to the same Adam Schiffs, liars, and people who are out for themselves. I'm not saying every Democrat is that way. I'm the average Democrat is a hardworking person paying attention to their family and their bills. They don't. They don't care what's happening in Washington is like an afterthought. But I think the Democrats in Washington are corrupt as hell. And by the way, some Republicans too. And usually you see them when an important bill comes, trotting along. You think, well, the Republicans got this one, and all of a sudden you see 4 or 5 rhinos stick their heads up and say, well, I don't know whether I'm going to vote on that.
Why?
Because they're corrupt too. They're the two sides to the same coin. This is the problem that Trump has. People say, well, I've never seen a guy have so many executive orders. Trump is just, maybe he has to, because he knows if I'm going to get anything done, I've got to flood the zone. Yeah. Go ahead, Bill.
Do we ever audit on a yearly basis or semi-regular basis any of our elected officials? Well, you make $170,000 a year, but you seem to have accrued $2 million this year.
You are absolutely correct, and it should be part of the law. The law should be every year, every representative should be audited for how much they got in donations, what they did with their donations.
Where did that damn money come from? And you know what? I don't believe that they should be able. I'm running for office. I could sit there and run for office, and I don't care if I win, because I get to keep the campaign coffers when it's done. I pay out my stuff. What's left is mine. That's not fair. There should be an amendment on that. Oh, you run for office. By the way, if you don't win after your bills are paid, and you don't get a salary for it, by the way, then that money goes to charity.
Well, you would think that would be the thing to do, but see, the guys who have to make that decision are politicians.
Yeah.
And they're not going to shoot. These are the same guys, Bill, who talk and argue and debate about all our different health care options and Social Security, the little pittance of Social Security that we all get. We're a rich country. We could get 5 times what we get right now in Social Security if we didn't give all of our crap away. But we do. Okay, because that's right. In the meantime, these politicians, they get a special health care program, for life. Even when they leave office and wave goodbye, they're still getting the government health care system. You're saying, well, what's the difference? Well, it's the difference between, let's say, a Volkswagen and a Rolls-Royce. I mean, it is light years different.
Yes, but the difference is you pay for your Volkswagen. They don't pay for the Rolls-Royce.
That's true. That is so very true. That's why, folks, when you see people, they always run for a camera. You know, all these politicians, they love to be on television, and they're all shaking their fists, and they're all saying what they're gonna do and what they'll be doing soon, and they're gonna have a hearing, and they're gonna straighten everything out. And you know, as a viewer, you kind of get excited when you watch it, saying, "Oh, at last somebody's paying attention." And then after they have their hearings, they go to lunch, or they go home on vacation, or they do something and they forget all about it. You know, they had this whole persona. I like Jim Jordan. I like him. He's a nice enough guy. I don't know him, but, you know, he doesn't wear a sport coat. He rolls his sleeves up on his white shirt and goes on camera like that. Well, he has the build where you can do that. He's in good shape, and he figures, hey, I'm going to flaunt it. But it's a persona. The roll sleeves up mean he's doing his job. But the question is, what the hell is the result of his work? Where are the end results? You know, have we had any effective legislation? Come on. For example, Bill, right now, this week, they're talking about passing a law that is going to limit the areas of importance for these district judges. You know, limit their authority to a certain district. That's why they call them district judges. District judges mean they were supposed to be in a certain defined area, not issuing edicts from their little defined area that would affect the entire nation, you know? So now they're talking on all these TV shows about how they're going to sit down this week and have a hearing about this and a hearing about that. And the average viewer, like you, Bill, or me, you know, we're sitting there thinking, what's the discussion about? We all know it has to be done. Go in that room right now, sit down, and do it. You know, but they're all full of you know what. And yeah. Anyway, Bill, another thing happened yesterday and didn't get a lot of talk, but it's really important. Really, really important. Yesterday, well, do you remember when Biden said this?
So it's going to become a wind generation. And all they're doing is they're going to save them a hell of a lot of money, and they're using the same transmission line that transmitted the coal-fired electric on. We're going to be shutting these plants down all across America and having wind and solar.
He was truly on another planet. The guy was just not on the same page as the rest of the world. And by the way, now they're saying that mess he was a mess. Now they're finally saying, well, yeah, we all kind of knew that he was diminished. I mean, mind you, the rest of the world had a clue that he was diminished from the first day he started to talk. But now they're finally saying after he's out of office, well, yeah, he was diminished, and the White House staff knew about it, and they were propping him up, which leads to the question, who the hell was making the decisions?
Well, that's a good question. But, you know, I sit there and I listen to that because I wondered back when he did that. Well, we're going to be switching over to wind power. We're going to be using the same lines and I had a problem with that because these lines that we use, I look out the window and I see, you know, lines, power distribution lines, really not so much phone lines anymore, but how we distribute our power throughout the land. You know, and I'm not going to give my age, but I'm sitting there going, you know, these are the same lines I saw when I was a kid. And they were around when my dad was a kid and probably when, you know, some of them when his dad, my grandfather was a kid. Our infrastructure is old and dilapidated.
Well, if we weren't giving all of our money to all of these foreign wars, all of these strangers, and invested in our own country, we might have a state-of-the-art country right now, but we don't, because politicians, and by the way, they've been padding their own purses with that money too. But something interesting happened yesterday with regard to coal. Listen.
We have 4 items prepared for your signature this afternoon, sir. The first of these executive orders it may be one of the most significant executive orders of your administration thus far. This directs all departments and agencies of the federal government to end all discriminatory policies against the coal industry. This ends the leasing moratorium that prevents new coal projects on federal land, and it's going to accelerate all permitting and funding for new coal projects to allow the coal industry to flourish under your leadership, sir.
That's great. Thank you.
Wow. And in one fell swoop, in the signing of an executive order, he removed Biden's ridiculous blockage of coal. And by the way, Bill, you know, they talk about coal, and the image they try to present on the left is dirty, filthy air and pollution. But over the past couple of decades, they've learned how to process clean coal. First of all, they have scrubbers and things like that and filtration systems on these plants. That excess coal dust and stuff is not getting into the air like it used to and causing health issues. You know, and by the way, nothing powers our economy right now better than coal.
Yeah, you know, Pennsylvania is a coal state. West Virginia is a coal state. I've been around them. I've seen them. And what I saw was clean production. Now, I'm not going to say the mining of it is not dirty, but, you know, I mean, you're not spewing out black smoke into the air. But there's a lot of things. You know, do you think working nuclear physicist is not working with something dangerous that can harm him or take his life if something's not properly done?
Mining has gotten safer
Yes,
over
it
the
has.
years. I mean, there was a time when they literally would put a canary in the mine, and it was a little bird in a cage, and when the bird died, you had to get out of there because the gas levels were dangerous. That's how dangerous it was at one time. But now they have all sorts of safety regulations and situations they have to deal with on a regular basis. And what people forget, when a community is working the mines in the area, it's funding families. There are high schools and there are hospitals, and there are communities that are vibrant because of the coal industry. And when you take that away, like Biden talked about so nonchalantly, you are crushing those little communities. Bill, you worked in West Virginia at one time. You've seen firsthand those areas. If you live in Western Pennsylvania, odds are you're living in a house that's probably 100, 200 feet above some mine somewhere, because all throughout Western Pennsylvania, actually, there are mines, you know, where I heard the governor of, I believe it was Montana, talking about how important this bill was to his state because they power cities like Seattle and Portland. They get their coal from, people don't think of Montana as being a coal state, but it really is. And when Biden shuts all this down, he's crushing these communities. And they say for wind power, there has never been a scientific report that's come out that has said that wind power is a good replacement for coal. It is inefficient. It doesn't generate a fraction of what coal generates, Bill.
Yeah. You know, coal and oil are the things that built America, and we are tied at the hip to it.
Yep.
For at least the next 200 years until you can figure something else out. But it wasn't wind power. There are other things that I've read about and seen. One that intrigued me, but we're not going to go into it because that's not what the show is about. But there are other alternatives. But oil, for one, is going to be something any mechanical moving part needs some kind of lubrication. And just about this microphone, oil was involved in the production of it. So this podcast, whether, you know, the wires it goes over, how it's transmitted, oil had something to do with.
Yeah.
coal had something to do with it. That's just
Hey, much of the clothing
hardcore
you're
fact.
wearing probably is
Yeah.
made with some kind of a residue from either oil or coal or one of those products. You know, we are dreaming if we think that we can just stop those things from being an important part of our society, and nothing will change. You know, there was a time when Biden said during the past 4 years that you're going to be driving electric cars, you'll have no option. I think it was 2030. No option. Everybody will be buying electric cars. They're not ready yet. As a matter of fact, I've heard, and I could be wrong, maybe if Mr. Musk is listening to our program, he can let us know, but I've heard that he's such a interesting guy, and they're not just falling back, resting on their laurels with electric, that his company is looking into other more sophisticated, more efficient engines that are powered by other things other than lithium batteries. You know, and I, to your point, I think I know what you were talking about. I think, were you talking about the hydrogen engine or the water powered engine? There's somebody Go ahead.
There's quite a few things out there that, but the hydrogen is one of them. Not the one that I was referring to, but that is a good thing. And I think that there are other things out there. Well, I know there are other things out there, but you know, that gets back to how we started the show with the tariffs. See, it all comes full circle because the tariffs also sit there and ignite the fire to us producing and building things here in America again. And with that comes the need for something new, and that's where ingenuity and somebody going, well, how do we tackle this hurdle? Again, the mother of invention is a simple fact that there's a need, and when we hit that obstacle, that's when America's real ingenuity kicks in, and the creative minds that are here that we've always had to sit there and overcome that obstacle and work beyond it, and we create new technology.
Here's what Trump had to say about the coal move yesterday.
For 4 long years, Joe Biden and congressional Democrats tried to abolish the American coal industry. They did everything in their power while he was awake, which wasn't much, shutting down dozens of coal plants, banning coal leases on federal lands, and putting thousands and thousands of coal miners out of work.
You know, some people may say, well, boy, he's awfully tough on Biden. He's the president now, and he's privy to a lot of information he didn't have even before he was sworn into office. And I think he knows more about how corrupt and how evil Biden actually was. And yeah, he was diminished big time. But he had his lucid moments, and it was during those lucid moments that he still was that way. You know, I mean, he knew what he was doing with his son, Hunter. He knew what he was doing as far as selling access. You know, nobody's been punished. That's the other thing, Bill. Are we ever going to see justice? One of the things we were hoping for was, in all fairness, when Trump got into office, he would bring some of these criminals to justice. But it seems that they're still out there flaunting their criminality. You know, they're just out there doing their thing. There's been no punishment for these people. And as a matter of fact, not much has been happening as far as justice goes with the left in their demonstrations. When they have these demonstrations and break windows and burn things and disrupt things, they're slapped on the wrist even now and sent down their way. Whereas I always think that if a conservative has that same situation, they're going to feel the full weight of the law. It happened during January 6th. You know, we had people who were walking through the Capitol with flags like they were on a parade. It was like they were a tour bus going through the Capitol. And all those people were rounded up and sent away for 3.5, 4 years of imprisonment. And they were called the worst things in the world by the left. And they are still called that by a lot of the leftist media. And you know, they look at what happened to Peter Navarro or Steve Bannon. These guys never should have gone to jail ever. ever. They never should have gone to jail. But the Biden administration and the Biden Department of Justice came down with a hammer on those guys, and they did it with a smile. Conversely, we have those guys doing worse things, and they're still walking the streets. And I think, what the hell is going on? We had Kash Patel talking about how he was going to, if he gets into a position of power, he was going to make them understand that there is justice in the United States. Well, I'm waiting, Kash. I'm waiting, man. I'm hoping to God you actually come through with your promises, because you told us certain things. I saw most of your interviews, and I applauded your interviews when you were just John Q. Public. But now you're the FBI director. Now, I do think that, by the way, these guys are running into obstacles.
I'm still going. It's too new, and there's too many obstacles. And I would rather report nothing than to sit there and have the media focused on you, saying, "What a blank show," because I think that's what's going on. They're throwing so much opposition. It is hard to get back past the minutia.
Yeah, that's why he brought in Dan Bongino to run interference, I think. And I think we haven't heard a thing from Bongino either. It's like everybody's hush. Now, the other thing is we're seeing Pam Bondi, it's like she has her own TV show now. She's always out there on television being interviewed by somebody, and God bless her. I'm happy. She has a terrific attitude, but, the proof is in the pudding. Let's see some action. And I guess I'm just maybe I'm missing something. Maybe it's something that's getting by me, but I just don't see. I see the attack is still 100% on Trump.
Well, I think you're assuming that the playing field is level. It's never been level, and just because the American public has voted for change in Trump, the ground, the field is still a rigged field.
Yeah. You know what's interesting? Harry Enton was on CNN yesterday, and the guy, I don't know how he keeps his job, because he's probably one of the few people on that network that, honest to God, seems to be trying to be honest and not to interject his opinion. He was talking about President Trump's popularity as of yesterday.
I think there was this concern among some folks that Donald Trump would come in for a second term and kind of be a lame duck. He ain't no lame duck. If anything, he's a soaring eagle. What am I talking about here? Let's talk about Trump executive orders in 2025. He's already signed 111 so far. That is the most at this point in a presidency in at least 100 years. In fact, it's the most in any single year, and we're only in April, since Harry S. Truman in the early 1950s. The bottom line is, whether you like Trump or you don't like him, you can't say that he's come in and not try to deliver on what he at least believes was his promises on the campaign trail, and he's doing so in historic fashion.
How are people reacting to and feel about Trump's approach?
Yeah, okay. So Trump's approach here, what are we talking about? Trump's approach to presidential power. I think the American people recognize what he's doing here is completely different. We're talking, get this, 86% of the American public believes that Trump's approach to presidential power is completely different from past presidents, compared to only 14% who believe it is in line with precedent. And we're talking about at least 79% of Democrats, independents, and Republicans. So again, you can agree or you can disagree with Donald Trump, but what you can't disagree with is that he's doing things very differently. I have used the Frank Sinatra quote before. He is doing it, quote unquote, my way, and that is what Donald Trump has done throughout both of his presidential terms, and he's certainly doing that, Kate Baldwin, in term number 2.
So completely differently, clearly they agree, but take it a step further? Do the people think he has too much, he's taken too much power?
Yeah, this I think is the real question, right? You can believe that he's doing stuff completely differently, but do you think that he has a little too much power or not? And this is interesting. So Trump's presidential power is too much, the right amount, too little. Well, 47% say too much. but then you get 36% who say the right amount. Then you get 17% who say too little. So you're essentially dealing with a majority of the American public, 53%, who do not say that Trump has too much power. They either says he has too little power or the right amount of power. So the idea, that argument that Donald Trump is, quote unquote, a king, that I don't think holds with the American people. It does hold maybe with 47%, but with the majority of folks, they believe Donald Trump's doing something completely differently, and they don't believe he has too much power, and the executive orders he signed certainly suggest he's no lame duck. He is, as I said at the beginning, a soaring eagle.
Harry Enton from CNN. That's really an interesting evaluation of where Trump is as of yesterday. So when you hear people say he's being a dictator, he's being a fascist, the American people don't feel that way.
Well, I'll tell you what's going to happen if the stock market rallies. It was doing it yesterday, and then China. They people still pay attention to China's BS. But if the stocks flip and go positive consistently, all of a sudden, a lot of the negative narrative on Trump is going to end. And the dip in the stock market really with this tariff war could last a long time. But, I'm beginning to believe if you have a little patience here, you're going to see it it could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be this Friday or next week. But I think in the short run, you're probably going to see the uptick. And when it ticks up, it's going to tick up. Now, manufacturing to come back here, Democrats go, it's going to take a while to build these factories. Yeah, or refurbish factories. It is. But you know what? Why sit there and let China refurbish their factories and build new factories? It's going to take them the same amount of time.
And you know what people forget? Is it takes people, American workers, to refurbish the factories.
Yeah.
So as soon as you say, okay, we're going to start refurbishing and repurposing a factory building in Detroit, there are people who are going to work.
Steel, brick, mortar. You've got painters. You've got electricians. You've got accounting people. You've got delivery people. Oh boy, what? We're ticking off a lot of jobs there.
Yep, absolutely. So as soon as the process starts, Americans go to work. And that's the whole thing that Trump is talking about, putting Americans back to work. And it doesn't stop, by the way, because the process will continue. If what happens, if what Trump is talking about happens, meaning our industry comes back to the United States, is there'll be new plants going up all over the place, new buildings going up all over the place. And those people who start working in one plant, when they're done in one plant, they'll go over and help refurbish another plant.
Let me ask you a question. Do you need office buildings and personnel to manage those plants?
Absolutely. Of course you do.
Wait a minute. This would be a whole new revolution, a reinvention of America, a rebirth of America.
Absolutely. That's exactly what we're talking about.
We can't have that. No tariffs then, because that would be too good.
And this is why 53% of the American people are behind President Trump as of yesterday. No matter what they're trying to sell you in the media, no matter what they're saying about him on the liberal morning shows, we're telling you, most of the American people are behind this guy. We saw these demonstrations over the weekend. They can be depressing to a lot of people. To the average American who, on a Saturday morning, turns on the news and all of a sudden you see 10,000 people walking around in Philadelphia or Boston or Atlanta. It can be really, kind of depressing. But you have to remember that's a tiny little fraction of the people who support this guy. I mean, we have 77 million people who voted for Trump. It was overwhelming. It was popular vote and electoral vote. And they voted for this guy and gave him another chance. And they haven't wavered. Those demonstrators, who, by the way, probably didn't vote. There was a report I saw over the past couple of days where someone said, a lot of the people who were at these demonstrations were illegals, especially up in Boston. Up in Boston Commons, there were a lot of illegals who were demonstrating. So they're walking around pretending they're American citizens with their English signs and getting their $200 a day. But they're not here legally,
No.
So
the other thing you're going to have, may as well get your CDL license, because if manufacturing comes back, instead of going to the port and picking up, Chinese stuff, you're going to be going to a factory and delivering American goods. Kind of a diversion here, but I've got a nephew up in Alaska that is in the oil industry and one of the bosses up there. But they tried the electric trucks up there,
yeah,
to haul stuff, and because they were forced to, and he goes, they're all parked. They don't, because one of the things is the electric motor. They don't charge in the frozen tundra.
Yeah.
And they don't hold a charge.
Yeah.
And when you do get a charge in them, you got 3, maybe 6 hours if you're lucky. And then you got to charge all night. So, it's stop for a long time. Go.
Yeah.
Stop.
For a long time.
Stop.
Yeah.
Stop. Go.
Stop. They're not
So
practical.
so they sat there, fire up the diesels.
Yeah. They're not practical, Bill. They're political. That's all they are.
Yeah. So, that's just a cold, hard fact.
Well, I'm excited for our country if we stay the course, and like President Trump says, we don't panic. We act like we're Americans. I feel like this is 1941 America, and you're saying, well, what do you mean, Jim? We were going into a war, but an amazing thing happened in 1941. Our economy did a flip. You're saying, what are you talking about? Well, all those car companies in Detroit, they had to retool, and they had to retool like that. You're saying, how, snap of a finger quick? Yeah, absolutely. Because they were making cars, and all of a sudden, in 6 months, they were making airplanes, Jeeps, tanks. All these things were coming out of the same factories. That means they had to, and this was, we're talking about computerized automation and robotics. We're talking about where they had to bring in big new presses and install the new presses to print new sheet metal, for the wings and stuff like that. They had to move stuff out of the way. They had all-night crews clearing the way, getting the old equipment out to put the new equipment in, and they did it, and they did it effectively. And we made some of the greatest military equipment ever made in such a short period of time. And so right now, Trump is saying, hey, we can do that again. We can start manufacturing quickly again in this country. It's not going to take us 10 years. We're going to train people. There are a lot of people out there who'd love a good-paying job in a factory in Detroit.
But, we got to be careful. We bring manufacturing back. One of the things that killed manufacturing, I don't want to put down the union workers because I think unions are a great thing. But, one of the things was the high cost of labor, and you got stock markets and investors, this very small oligarchy that controls everything. And they're going, I'm not going to pay you $20 an hour when I can go to China and I can pay $1.20 an hour.
Good point. But you know what, Bill? I get the impression that Trump his whole approach is different. I don't think he's going to penalize the union workers for doing their job and getting their money. I think he's going to cut back on taxes, unnecessary taxes and tariffs. The savings we get from not having to pay these exorbitant taxes on the products we have will probably supplement the union workers. So we'll get we're not going to go, Trump is not going to go back and crush unions. And also, crush the businesses with the same exorbitant taxes. He's going to remove taxes. He's going to make it a much cleaner playing field. There'll be no more tariffs, so there'll be more demand for the product that we make. And by the way, when we make a product in this country, honest to God, I remember as a kid, it was a joke. You're buying, is that a Japanese toy? I don't want that. I want this. I want the American-made. Motorola, they were one of the last holdouts. They tried desperately to hang on to that American-made Quasar TV sets. After I think they were the last stronghold until finally they even capitulated. But we make great stuff when we put our minds to it, and I think that's where we're going right now.
Well, you got to hope so. I mean, because you had what I talked about with the unions. You had globalization. Let's minimize everything and make it pure profits. And we didn't worry about American ingenuity anymore or the, the quality of the goods because that was the hallmark of America. It was American made. It was by
Right.
God American. And, if you made that high wage, you could afford to buy what we made, you know. But you could go to the Five and Dime and get cheap Chinese stuff, and it was good into the bag. Probably broke one when it fell into the bag, and you got home, oh, it's junk. Yeah, well, what do you expect for 5 cents? And what do you expect from China that pays $1.20 an hour? Maybe now they're paying $2 an hour. What do you expect from them? You're not going to get the quality, even with their automation. It's cheap materials, cheap components. It's junk. Have you gone to a car dealership? Well, most of it is made, in China, and just go around the body and knock on it, and you know the sound and feel of metal, and you know the sound of cheap plastic.
Well, I
guarantee you.
I think that they're going to negotiate a deal eventually because China's not going to walk away from our market. They will reluctantly make some kind of a face-saving deal with the U.S., and Trump will walk away. He's the art of the deal. That's his book.
Well, why don't they just sit there and say, you know what? We'll go even Steven on the tariffs. We'll pay our people a decent wage. We will produce a competitive car out there, and may the best car win, because American people like choices. And if they can get a quality Chinese car or a quality American car, then whatever suits their needs. But in a fair marketplace,
I think it goes to ideology and to the culture. I think they've been run as a socialist country with an iron fist for so many decades now, and I think that they've had it their way, Bill, for decades when it comes to the economy, and all of a sudden they're getting an incredible pushback from this administration, and I don't think the Chinese understand how to deal with it just yet. I think somebody has got to sit down, some rational economist in China, and has got to say to Xi Jinping, this is not a match of masculine prowess. We're talking about the economy. You want to get something, or do you want to get nothing? And as it stands right now, you have 104% tariff. It's going to be impossible to sell our stuff in that market anymore. So it's better if we get a deal worked out. I saw it broken down. They're getting 20% penalty tariff for the fentanyl they're shipping to this country. All China has to do is say, no more fentanyl into our country. And there's 20% knocked off the 104%. And then they're getting penalized for the deadline, 50%, that came into effect last night. If they come back and say, look, we're going to deal with you quickly, Trump will knock that 50% off.
Then it starts to get down close to fair.
That's exactly where that's where it's going. And so, listen, you're going to hear the 104% thrown around on the news programs today.
It's all they throw around.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to make it sound like the sky is falling and this is terrible and we're losing China. And what does it mean to us? It means that Trump has put him in a position where they have to negotiate. That's what it means to us.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, Bill, before I forget, did you hear what happened yesterday? They're not talking about this at all, but Russia launched a missile into space and put something into orbit, and nobody knows what the hell it is.
I thought that was the day before yesterday. I saw that news story yesterday.
Maybe I only saw it yesterday. It could have been the day before yesterday. But the thing is, they're speculating it's some kind of a weapon.
Well, when you don't know, all kinds of speculation could come about. It could be a weapon. It could be it could be a surveillance satellite.
Yeah.
It could be just a test craft that they sent up there. And we're not going to say anything. Let everybody wonder.
Well,
Let
do you
them guess.
remember not too long ago, people were talking about a weapon we supposedly had called the rods of God, and nobody has denied that we have it. There's been no talk about it. You're saying, what? Rods of God. It was an energy pulse weapon that was mounted on a satellite system that from space could take out, targets on our planet. with no warning at all. With a missile, you can see it coming, but with the rods of God, you aim and you fire. It's almost like a James Bond movie.
Yeah.
But nobody's ever said we really have it. But then there's been speculation, what happened in Maui. There was a lot of discussion about that having been started by an energy weapon of some kind. So there's a lot of stuff they're not telling us, folks. A lot of things out there that we just don't know about. But what we do not know about for sure is what they launched the day before yesterday out of Russia. But I think you're right, Bill. I think it's probably some kind of a surveillance system.
And you know what? When you go to Hawaii, because we saw the footage and we said, "Look, there's a beam going down." But after I thought about it, I said that I unless I'm getting confused, but energy pulse, like an EMP, electromagnetic, that's not something you see. And it does exist. You can go to the 5 and dime store and make a little one that'll sit there and zap little radios at close range, or somebody's electric watch or their phone that works off of a 9-volt battery.
Well, they said that there were houses and buildings in Maui that had a blue roof, and if they had a blue roof, they were not targeted. So apparently the buildings that had blue roofs. Now, I don't know whether this is true or not. I haven't been to Maui, but this is the stories we're on. But like so many stories over the last year and a half, they go by the wayside so fast. I mean, nobody's talking about what happened to Maui. No, nothing has been resolved with that Maui disaster and all those people dying. And the other thing we never hear about, Bill, is whatever happened to the 30 tons of ammonium nitrate that they lost
60.
on that train? 60 tons, yeah. I'm sorry, I was confused. 60 tons of ammonium nitrate that just like walked away from a train. Nobody's talking about that. That would be enough to bring down a lot of buildings, trust me.
Well, I think you're the only one. I had forgotten about it, and I think it was one of us that discovered it, but you keep remembering that, and probably a good idea, because it will come back to bite us in the butt. Things like that usually do.
Did they ever they ever find out what caused all of the food processing plants to burn in our country over the last 2.5 years?
No, they ignore that story. The fact that we've cut. Look, there were some processing plants. There are warehouses that have gone too. Our food supply has been severely endangered, and I thought it was funny because, while things were shrinking up, people are going, "See, Biden's got it all under control. We have stuff." But are we stretched thin? Was it all just a show? Are we in bad shape?
Well, I think that Trump, everything he's doing right now, which seems so unusual and so drastic to a casual observer, Trump knows it's necessary because we've ignored them for a long, long time in this country. We talked, you just said it a little while ago on this program about the infrastructure being so bad. Absolutely true. Cities like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, people don't realize, if they've never been to Pittsburgh, just how many bridges are in the city of Pittsburgh.
It's the bridge city. It
is the bridge city. And yet most of the bridges are structurally unsafe. They need to have work done on them. And that's because nobody's paid any attention to the infrastructure. And that's why you have buildings that are in unstable situations. God, look what happened in Dominican Republic over the past couple of days. I don't know if you heard about it, but a dance hall roof collapsed, killed 98 people, including 2 former Major League Baseball players, or maybe one of them wasn't former. I'm not really sure, but there's 2 Major League Baseball players, U.S. Major League Baseball players, who died in that tragedy. And it's probably because they don't have the standards that we have as far as building codes and things like that in the Dominican Republic.
Doesn't matter what your building codes are. The simple fact is things deteriorate, and they decompose. They get old.
Yep.
Buildings start to lose, their soundness. And we have old buildings, old infrastructure. Plus, the Earth is constantly changing. I'm sure that there are ground movements that I remember when I, grew up in Fresno and I worked at the Security National Bank building in Fresno, and we were on the top floor. I could set a coffee cup on my desk and watch that cup throughout the day. If I put it over on the left side, at the end of the day, it would be on the right side, not because I drank it, because at that time, me to have a cup of coffee, I might do 2 or 3 sips, and that cup sat there. But at the end of the day, it was on the right side of the desk about to hit the floor because of the constant ground movement and maybe the sway of the old security building, that was, in the wind, the structural shift.
Didn't you tell me that you went to on a business trip? Was it back in the 80s or 90s? And you were in that hotel, the Hyatt, I believe it was.
Oh yeah, the one. Yeah, I was there a week before that walk.
What city was that? St. Louis,
Chicago.
Chicago. Oh, okay.
Yeah, I believe it was the Hyatt. Yeah.
And that was where the staircase collapsed on another. I mean, the walkway collapsed on another walkway.
Yeah, went straight down. Yeah, because look, I was there with a radio convention, and it's like taking a bunch of Cub Scouts. The kids that run all over the hotel and do everything. I can remember being up on that thing, hey, what are you doing? And doing whatever you could. Maybe taking a show program and throw it down at them or whatever. Stupid stuff that we did.
I'm thinking of the one in Kansas City, Bill. That's what I'm thinking of. The Hyatt Regency in 1981. Maybe it was a different one that you had.
They had a problem, yeah.
The Hyatt Regency in Kansas City was the one that I remember, which had the platform that collapsed. Chicago, they probably had something too over the past 20 or 30 years.
Maybe I got my cities confused because I've been in both cities. So,
well, I think that if you were there, then you were in Kansas City. But then again,
I remember seeing it on the news, and it was right around the time frame.
Bill, do you want to feel old? It was 44 years ago. 43.
Well, I was only
Don't
6
say it.
at the time.
Yes, you were 6. That's true. You
well,
were confused.
Now you know my age, because
it was a long time ago. Anyway, before we forget, Bill, we should remind people that if you like a great cup of coffee, we can get you one. It's very simple. All you have to do is go to Jim and Bill's Right Side Shop, therightsideShop.com, and get Jim and Bill's Right Side Coffee. It's a delicious medium blend roast of delicious, flavorful coffee. It'll wake you up and open your eyes and start your day on the right foot. We also have a decaf version for people who can't have the high test. And it's a wonderful way to start your day. Also, if you don't like coffee, we've got in our gift shop, we've got, we have cups and we have sweatshirts and hats. And I'm sure I'm missing stuff. T-shirts. We have, what's that mug that is so interesting? What the heck?
Trumpinator?
Pardon?
The Trumpinator?
Trumpinator. We it's constantly being updated, this gift shop. Check it out if you would, rightsideshop.com, or go to our main website, itsanotherday.com, and hit the button for Right Side Shop. It'll take you right there. And, of course, we've spared no expense with our promotion because we have Juan Jose and the Border Crossers.
Wake up on the right side with Right Side Coffee.
Right Side Coffee. If you don't mind, I'm going to have a sip. So good. So very good.
Good stuff.
Did you hear about the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops? They made billions of dollars off of moving illegals around the country. They did it under the guise of being thoughtful and charitable and helping people integrate into our society. Mind you, they were here illegally, but that was not important to the U.S. Catholic Conference of Bishops. But they've now said that they're done. They're not going to do it anymore. No more getting involved with trafficking of. And I say trafficking because one of the things that's been proven is that they also helped to move trafficked children, unbeknownst to them. I don't know. They will say it. They will say they didn't know. They were just moving families around, but they were also moving trafficked children to different unknown places where they would disappear. And by the way, I was thinking, Bill, as I was putting the show together this morning, I have a pretty solid stance on asking illegals to leave the country, adults. But those trafficked children that are here with no guide, no support systems, and they've been stolen away from their families and stuff, I think we should have a different approach to them. I really do, because they are truly the innocent victims. They are here because they were stolen and taken here. And because we are a wholesome and loving and charitable country, I do think that we should find a place to integrate them into our society. They didn't do it intentionally. And maybe that's me being a little soft, I don't know, but I do think you can't, like Trump with his tariffs, it's not cut and dry. You have to negotiate. You have to be a little flexible. And I think that there's millions of illegal adults that we can send back to where they came from, justifiably so. But I think that the little innocents who are here with no support system, no parents, no families, we just can't send them back to confusion and chaos. I think we can probably do something to straighten their lives out. What do you think?
Well, again, there are no rules here or anything to follow. The fact that they're innocent, I guess my concern would be if there are no parents, all right? Because if they're with parents, they go back with their parents. If there are no parents, then whose responsibility are they? Are they another, what was the kid's name back in...
Elian Omar? No.
Gonzalez.
Gonzalez, yeah.
Because he didn't want to go back, but then I guess when he went back, he became, and by now he's an adult, probably a rebel against the United States. But either way, if these children are sent back, are they going to go back and be properly, accommodated until a family, they're reunited with their family or with a family? If they don't have a family, you want to know about the well-being of the child for... as they grow up. Right. Can they be integrated here? Should they be integrated there? That's a big decision. Because if we integrate them here, somebody, somewhere.
Speaking as a Catholic,
somebody's going to argue about it.
I think that what should happen is that those billions of dollars that the Catholic charities and the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops made on moving these people around the country, they should be required to donate a large portion of that money to the resettlement and to the normalization of the lives of these innocents. If they want to be really charitable, don't just take the money and run. If these kids are found to be being abused and trafficked, and we can rescue them, and they have no place to go, then we as a country should embrace them and help build their lives and get them back on. Find adopted parents for them. Find a place where they can grow and be nurtured. That's just my own humble opinion.
Yeah, but what will happen is there will be some kind of committee formed and everything.
It'll be abused.
The children will be lost in bureaucracy and in the paperwork of it, and we open up a can of worms of a money pit. Yeah. There needs to be something done. If we know that they have no place to go, then maybe we open them up to an adoptive family who will take and love them and support them. And, they could, and if when they turn 18, if they go, I want to go back to my home.
Yeah.
Then they're old enough to be able to handle it.
Yes, I agree. That's a good point. Pete Hegseth was in Panama at the canal yesterday, and he was talking about Trump's determination to make that an American property again.
I want to be very clear. China did not build this canal. China does not operate this canal. And China will not weaponize this canal. Together with Panama in the lead, we will keep the canal secure and available for all nations through the deterrent power of the strongest, most effective, and most lethal fighting force in the world. We will do this in partnership with Panama Together, we will take back the Panama Canal from China's influence. And we will do this along with other capable, like-minded allies and partners. This is what peace through strength looks like.
Now, that's kind of different from what they were saying before. Trump said initially we're taking back the canal. And now they've softened it a bit now to placate Panama by saying with Panama in the lead, we're going to take it back. But I wouldn't hesitate if I were Trump to say, wait a second, if Panama is going to cause us problems, we're taking that property back because we built that property. We gave up 35,000 lives to build that property. Our American dollars went into building. You know, just because the money was spent in the early 1900s doesn't make it any less valuable. If anything, it's more valuable today. You just heard him say we spent $5 million to renovate a pier. That's what he was there for in Panama. So I do think that it's a smart move. People may say, well, it's only the Panama Canal. The Panama Canal is an important thing. If you stop people from going through the Panama Canal, they have to go around the southern tip of South America. That adds at least 2 weeks to a trip.
Who benefits the most from the Panama Canal?
Well, in all honesty, the people who benefit the most are the Panamanians because they have jobs. It generates a revenue. But who benefits the most? I would say that we do, or we should, not China.
No, it shouldn't be China. Yeah, it's a fair canal, I guess, for everyone, except for maybe wartime. I don't know. You know, I'm sitting there looking at the Panama Canal, and you know, we can't let that be sold or given away by Panama. There was a hitch to the sale of $1, which was stupid. But I would tend to say that, you know, if we can't exercise some control on that, I would almost render it ineffective.
Well, all they have to do is blockade it.
Yeah.
You know, I think the Germans during World War II used to try to pick off ships that were taking equipment from one coast to another, and they would go through the Panama Canal, and the German subs, which, by the way, there were a lot more of them.
And wait.
Yeah, a lot more of them were off our coast than they admitted to, you know, during the war. We had a lot of Germans sinking our merchant ships, like right off the coast. People said that if you lived on the beach, you could look and every so often see a ship going down. Yeah. It was that kind of a situation. Anyway, my friend, I think we've just about done it for today. Anything you want to add to our little program today?
No, I think that's enough. I mean, we pretty well talked it out. Today will be an interesting day. The stocks will do what they do. I'm hoping that they, like yesterday, rally but stay. But I'm sure that somebody will go out there, a nattering nabob of negativism will sit there and have something to say, to sit there and create fear, because that seems to be what's going on.
Did you say a nattering nabob of negativism?
Yeah, the old Spiro Agnew term.
Yes. Well, you say that 5 or 6 times.
Say it 5 times real fast.
Yeah. No, you know, I don't think so. Yes.
Spit out your teeth when you do.
I think you're right, though. Today's going to be an interesting day. Halfway through the week, a lot of things going on. There'll be discussions of tariffs. We'll be hearing about other countries. We had 50 just the day before yesterday. Now we have at least 70, they say, of countries that want to get in line to discuss renegotiating their tariff situation. I do think that China is going to, see the light and realize we've got to do something to rescue this, Anyway, I'm done. You can put a fork in this thing, buddy. Have a great day, and we'll see you tomorrow.
Well, you do the same. We'll see you tomorrow. Until then, hasta la vista, baby. We're out of here.
This is CRN America.